One of the difficult realities that I have learned in software development is that some concepts just take a while before they click. And I remember when I was trying to learn React, it took years until I finally just felt like it started to even make sense. I read the React docs. I followed tutorials. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I made my own projects. I read books, but it just felt like I just didn't get it. Like I felt like if I wasn't following this tutorial, that there's no way I would be able to make it myself. And I felt that way for years until I finally just repeatedly did this one task over and over, just like defining a function interface and just doing basically just the same thing over and over. Basically, like when you do math problems over and over until you just get it, until you just like cram it in your head and just figure it out. That was how React finally began to click for me, right? Before that, I just couldn't wrap my head around state and, like use effect and props and all that stuff. It just wasn't clicking because it was so different than .NET. And for me, getting React to click took way longer than .NET did to click in my head. And I began to think to myself, I'm like, maybe I'm just simply just not a good React developer. And that's probably true. I'm probably below average at React, to be honest with you. But I I just I was like, man, when is this gonna start making sense? And I have learned that sometimes you just have to continue studying, researching, and just repeatedly doing programming until it begins to make sense. And that's just the difficult reality that I've learned, the difficult truth that I've learned in this career. And while reading books obviously helps a lot, watching tutorials helps. I really think that until you open up a project file and try it yourself, you're not going to know what you know, because if you just follow a tutorial, you're going to think that you know everything until you don't have that tutorial, and then you open that file and you don't know where to start. And that was basically my experience in React, right? I didn't know what to do despite the fact that I had made things in React. And so that was frustrating, honestly. That was very frustrating because I was like years in, and like, I think there's a belief out there that like years experience just generally in software development means that you're all of a sudden an expert in every programming language or framework, which is just the farthest thing from the truth. And that's kind of why I think that full stack development as a title is kind of silly, because I don't think you can truly ever be full stack, in my opinion. But I I think I've found this to be true also on YouTube, right? Because I've been making videos off and on for 8 years, right? On over everything from engines, woodworking, cars, software development, and many things. Not because I felt like I was going to, find some crazy YouTube success. I genuinely just enjoy making the videos. And then when I finally started to integrate software development years ago, I did it specifically as a way to help me learn and to test my own knowledge to see that, okay, if I'm talking to a camera or if I'm trying to, code something up on a video or whatever, do I actually know what to do, or can I get like 80% of the way there? Because that was really my goal. I don't need to get 100% of the way there. Obviously, I'm not going to become an expert, right? At least, not now, right? Like, but if I can get 80% of the way there and I can look up the last 20, that puts me in a way better spot than having to look up 80% and only do 20. So I think that YouTube has helped just tremendously. And that still is one of my biggest pieces of advice for somebody trying to prepare for interviews or just get better at software development, is honestly just turn your camera on and make a video and talk about whatever topic that you're remotely interested in and see if you can talk about it, but also watch yourself back and see, okay, here's what I know, here's what I don't know. That's what I did. I've done that for years, and I'm going to continue because I just enjoy it, and I love talking about different topics. But the difficult it's helped me to process. I think that's another thing about it's helped me to process difficult truths about software development. And one of the fact is that it can be a difficult career path. Now, obviously, you'll hear different opinions about people saying that it's easy or like you just eat food all day, you don't do anything. That's not true. And it is a rather it's different. It's difficult because of how much you have to know, right? There's so many different frameworks and libraries, debugging, problem solving, communication skills of people, and now you throw AI into the mix, and it just adds a whole other element to the thing. So it's interesting, but obviously, I still feel like some things just don't click, right? I still feel that way all the time. But some things I feel like do click now. And that's a big improvement from where I was at 5 or 6 years ago. I remember when I was in school studying, and I just could barely even write a method in C sharp, and I remember I remember exactly what it was like back then, and now I look back at it where I am now and realize that it just takes time. It just takes time, patience, and studying and practice. But patience is the biggest thing I think for success in this career is patience because um, if you try to force your way to learn a topic, I think the risk there is that you try to learn too much at once and you never allow yourself to truly understand one thing very well. And sometimes, at least for me, whenever I approached React, I would go and try to read about npm, Node, Webpack, and all these different things, and it just really clouded my vision about React, and it just clouded my understanding, and I wasn't ever able to truly get it until I just finally narrowed in and focused on one thing. And it's difficult to do, especially when you're starting out, because you feel like you need to learn everything all at once and become, an expert, a full stack developer, right? But I would seriously just try to get good at one thing. I've read I've read, opposing viewpoints about this where people say that you shouldn't care what language or framework you work in. I just, from my experience, that just hasn't been true, right? That just hasn't been my experience personally. I found more success when I really honed in on .NET and just tried to become excellent at it. So I don't know what your experience may be, but let me know. I mean, there's so many different experiences you can have in this career, and it's very interesting to see the different routes that that are out there to take. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.